My God, look what's happening. I need some gold and silver, and like that, it's over.
The gold and silver markets are on the edge of a supply crisis, and almost no one is ready. For years, the U.S. dominated the flow of precious metals, but now, that flow has stopped. Andy Schectman, CEO of Miles Franklin and one of the few insiders with direct access to the metals market, is sounding the alarm. Demand is skyrocketing, supply is vanishing, and once the masses wake up, it's game over. Stay with us as we break down why this could be your last chance to get in before it's too late.
Right now, I think the whole world has awoken to inflation, to anxiety, to war, to currency debasement, to political and geopolitical, to divisiveness, all of these things that are spinning and spinning and spinning in every different direction. And all of a sudden, people are waking up. So the metal that used to flow to the U.S. from the U.K. and Australia and Austria and South Africa, it's not anymore. And within a matter of the last few weeks, getting product has become really, really, really frighteningly difficult. I guess I could sum it up in one sentence, and that is that the price is in nowhere even the same ballpark, a reflection of demand, which is many, 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 many times greater than what the price would tell us. As one of only 27 U.S. Mint authorized resellers in the world for 30 years, we've been doing this for 33. The last 2.5 years, everything has gone upside down since the pandemic. Everything. What's really interesting is Rick Rule, a buddy of mine here in the U.S. who's kind of the Pied Piper in this industry. He talks about the allocation of metals ownership in the United States from the Harvard Endowment Fund all the way down to Joe Sixpack is less than 0.5%. So it's the pimple on the elephant. What happens when the elephant turns around and says, my God, look what's happening. I need some gold and silver, and like that, it's over. And I've been saying this for 2 years. I've been saying for 2 years that product is getting hard to get, that getting clients is easier than getting product. It never was that way. And this market will ultimately define itself by an inability to source product. I've been saying that because I see this event mathematically and economically and logically ultimately coming. And I get a lot of heat for it. Yeah, you're talking your book. No, I'm not. I'm seeing what's coming. And if this is what it's like when there's not even 1% of the public has assets in metals, what happens if it gets to 5%, a lowly 5%, which would represent a tenfold increase in demand in the United States? And much like the open interest on COMEX right now being 1,750% greater than the registered bars in the vault, that's what's going to happen. The word rehypothecation, the word where you think you're going to have access to gold, you're not, and silver. And I think it's only going to get worse as people wake up to what's coming. The physical market is incredibly liquid. I mean, I would love it if someone called and said, I have $10 million worth of silver bars to sell you. I'd pay them as fast as they could blink. And I think that's an environment where product is literally disappearing as fast as anything I've ever seen. And it's concerning. It really is. And I think it also perhaps is a precursor to what's coming next. Why is there such a scramble to get all of this stuff in your possession? And I think a lot of it has to deal with the fact that there is a growing coalition of countries that are moving against the Western hegemony. And I think this is the most important thing in the world, that, you know, when you take a look at the Belt Road Initiative with all 13 of the OPEC member countries on it, when you take a look at the BRICS nations, who Saudi Arabia just came out while in a meeting in South Africa and said, we are going to join the BRICS. South African president and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia both acknowledge this. When you see these are the countries that produce all of the world's commodities, they produce them, they import them, they are money to them. When you see the fact that you have a Moscow exchange who realizes all of this, or the talk of a Moscow exchange, which would appeal to all of these countries, where they can set the price for gold at a realistic price, call it $3,000, set silver at $50, $75, $100, and bang, like that, all of the Western markets would arbitrage directly to the East to capitalize on that. And you set a real price, you will break the COMEX, you will break the London Metals Exchange. Maybe this is becoming obvious, but I do believe that the Western dominance is going to be challenged by the BRICS nations, who have just come out and said, we are going to issue a world reserve currency to challenge the dollar. It will be pegged to currencies and commodities. And then you have them say, and by the way, we're going to issue a new exchange where metals can be traded freely to break the dominance and the manipulation of the Western system. These countries don't bitch when the West hold the price down so they can accumulate as much as they possibly can on the cheap. The handwriting is on the wall. These are the countries that are draining the exchanges and taking all the metal over to the East. And I think we'll wake up one day and we're going to see something that is going to be a spiritual, religious experience for many of the people who think wealth revolves around stocks, bonds, mutual funds. I won't be the one to say I told you so. I'm trying to get people just to open their eyes a little bit and look past the narrative, look past what we've all been taught to do, and look past our borders. You can see a group and a storm brewing right now that is directly going to challenge the dollar and impact precious metals prices maybe for the rest of our lives. When you look at 2008, they should have just let the forest fire clear the forest because, back then the Fed had a balance sheet of 800 billion. It's now about 9 trillion. So over the past 12 years, when everyone thought hope springs eternal and all you need to do is put your money in equities, well, they've been right, but they've been right because the Fed bought $9 trillion worth of interest rate sensitive assets, bonds, and mortgage-backed securities, which kept rates low, which created this illusion of prosperity, but which also was a gross distortion and misallocation of resources and capital, which has created no price discovery. And so you see a moment like this where it's going to be big trouble. And maybe this is exactly why you're seeing so much money in the reverse repo market, like $2 trillion. The banks don't want any money on the street. They would rather give their money to the Fed with safety overnight than to borrow it out and leave it out on the street. So the banks are reining in credit. And this is going to be an issue because just as massive credit expansion and deluge of money creation created prosperity, so too will a massive contraction of credit, which you're seeing, and the reining in of money, not giving it to anyone for everything anymore, ought to have the opposite effect. And so I think, all of these things that mixed in with the big money pulling all the metal off the exchanges, you put it all together, you start to see that the big money sees trouble coming. They're going to limit exposure to the street. They're going to limit risk by giving the money to the Fed overnight instead of the public. They're going to pull all the metal they can off the exchanges quietly, using price as the tool of misdirection. But these are the reasons that I think it's important that people understand that when I talk to people about using gold and silver as a vehicle to protect oneself, it's not an investment, it's wealth. It's wealth that's lived through 2 world wars and German hyperinflation and the Great Depression and every pandemic, and is still immutable wealth. And while we are in a very scary boat of uncharted waters surrounding us, I still think the safest place to be is the life raft that is a 5,000-year-old gold and silver life raft, and look at it as wealth. And if you own enough of it, you'll be wealthy.
Gold and silver are slipping through the cracks, and when the rush begins, most will be left empty-handed. Stay ahead of the curve. Keep learning, stay prepared, and take action before it's too late. If you found this valuable, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with those who need to hear it. The time to prepare is now.